Anyone else coming?
Great. Yeah, we have more people that are SVP'd. We can just start slowly and then just wait for them to come. But this yeah, well, first of all, thank you for coming. And yeah, this is our first community gathering event. So it's organized to be a very informal conversation about topics that are very important for RIASA and for systems futures. So and I think those are topics that are going to be very important for the individual work that people are going to talk about here as well. And we wanted to start with, of course, complexity, science and complex systems, just to get a bit of a sense on how people understand this idea and how we could potentially create some type of a moment here to reflect on what we are working with and how these ideas are actually embedded in what we do. So this is a conversation. So this is, yeah, I hope we can get started with something that is of value for everyone. And yeah, I will share my screen to share a bit of what's going to happen, but essentially it's just a very quick presentation about complex systems, and the world today is full of complex challenges and how we can actually identify those, and then we can continue this conversation with sharing challenges that you are dealing with right now, and if this idea of complexity actually makes sense for you and how this is going to work. So yeah, I will start sharing my screen now. A lot of tabs. I just need to. Okay, oh, good now. Awesome. So yeah, can you see my screen well?
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, I wanted to start with this question of why are complex challenges complex, or what makes these challenges that we are embedded in nowadays complex, and what this complexity actually means. So this is essentially the idea behind the event today. And this is a bit of what we're going to cover. So we live in a world of complexity, but what exactly that is. Then we're going to talk a bit about systems, types of systems, then going more specifically to complex systems, and then what makes it complex, and then some examples. And yes, just very, very quickly going through it because I want to hear from you as well. Okay. So let's start with we live in a world of complexity, and this is something that is very good to reflect upon, because every day we hear about a lot of different challenges that our world is facing: social challenges, environmental challenges, technological challenges, a lot of different issues that we're going through in the world. And then I went to research about what are some of the main challenges in the 21st century. And then I came across these two images, which I thought was very, very good to start reflecting about. And for example, I particularly like this one because it shows that some of these ideas, some of these challenges are actually very connected to each other. So let's say technological disruption is very linked to vision and foresight void, which is linked to identities and changing norms in society, and linked to environmental and ecological damage. So we can see that it's these technological disruptions are actually, for example, linked to several other challenges that we live in our society today. And this one as well was very good to see some of the topics. They are actually very active, let's say, very discussed in the 21st century now. So plastic pollution in oceans, globalization, geopolitics, as Burden knows very well, geoengineering. Anyway, just a lot of things going on, right? And sometimes it's very difficult for us to get our heads and minds around it. So it can be quite overwhelming, but I think during the course of this presentation, I would invite you to reflect a bit on why it can be overwhelming and how we can actually make more sense of it as we go forward. So yeah, first of all, starting with this concept of systems, what exactly is that? And we talk a lot about systems this and that, and what exactly is this? So I really like this definition by Donella Meadows that says a system is a set of things, people, cells, molecules, whatever, that is interconnected in such a way that they produce their own patterns of behavior over time. So this can be quite comprehensive, but it's always good to have a very comprehensive definition like that, and then we can go and see the examples and details of it. So for example, we can see here a car that is, can we say that a car is a system? So here we have all these parts of the cars that is just too many, right? And as it says in the definition of a system, a set of components that are interrelated and create an overall pattern of organization. So all these parts here separated don't actually make a car, right? They need to be in connection with each other and working together in a way that they are going to work for the overall workings of a car. So the wheels are not gonna work on themselves. They need all the other parts to actually function in a way that makes sense in the context of this vehicle. So that makes a good example of what a system is. And in the same way, we have our bodies here, as you know, we have so millions, right, of trillions, billions of parts. They're actually together working synergistically to form our bodies and the way that we function and so on. And here we have another example as Earth, right? Many, many components together that create what we call the planet Earth. And without them being in the exact moments, in the exact ways that they're actually working and being together, we wouldn't have our environment in the way that we have nowadays. So this is another example of a system, but they seem very different from each other, right? We have a car and we have Earth and we have our bodies, and how can these all be systems? They seem very different. So this is the moment that we start talking about types of system. They are all systems, but they are different types of systems. So we're going to focus today mainly on this more simple and complicated systems, and then of course the complex systems. So I really like this, specifically this chart here on the right, because it gives different dimensions to what the context and characteristics of the systems, and then the consequences of it, someone's understanding of it, what they can actually do to deal with the situations that may emerge in these types of systems, and then dangers and so on. But here, I would like to focus on these two. So let's say a car, right? They have all these repeating patterns and inconsistent behaviors. You drive a car and you know the car is going to work more or less in the same way every time that you drive. So you have these same repeating patterns that occur when you're actually driving the car. Clear cause and effect relationships evident to everyone. Right answers exist. So if there's a puncture in your car, or if there's a no oil and so on, you understand that there's a cause and there's a effect on that in your car, and there's a right answer. There's a way to actually fix it, right? You just put more oil, or you fix the puncture in your car or whatever. So there are very you know what's going on there, and it's based on facts. So people have organized and created cars based on engineering and based on mathematics and physics and so on. So there are facts involved. They're replicable in several different ways. So this makes it a car, let's say, a more simple system compared to, let's say, environmental disasters, right? And I don't know, corruption in governments or poverty. Anyway, other types of challenges that we have. So for these ones, there are different characteristics to it. So there's flux and unpredictability, for example. When we talk about environmental disasters, is very difficult to predict what's going to happen, because there are a lot of different components actually working together in ways that we may not know how their next move is going to be. And one of these parts are, for example, human beings, right? So we don't know exactly how they're going to behave. What is their next move? So that makes it a different context. There's no right answers, emergent instructive patterns. So there's no right answer to really deal with poverty, for example, because they are very contextual. They are embedded in several different fields of knowledge, and we don't know how they're going to, again, how the agents are going to behave. So we can't have right answers for things that are on ongoing change. So it's more in the field of the unknown, what we have here. We need to deal with the consequences and with the situations as they occur, because we don't have facts. They're actually creating that that situation. We have emergent patterns that are being developed as the challenge evolves. So these are, for example, two different types of systems that we can see every day in our lives, and they have different ways that they can actually be dealt with, right? So I would like to just quickly present, since the topic today is the complex systems and complex challenges, what makes complex systems complex. And one of the characteristics that we've mentioned is this multiplicity of parts. Going back to the idea of the car, they have a lot of parts, right? But they have a set number of parts to it. And that's it. We know how many parts they have and so on. And we can understand how they work together and predict and create the outcomes of the cars and so on. But when we talk about complex systems, these parts are too many. There are too many parts to actually take into consideration. So when we talk about, let's say, the difficulties on dealing with AI nowadays, there are so many parts to it. Of course, there are all the technical parts that make AI what it is. There's all the human parts to it. There's ethics involved. There is government policies involved. There are too many, right? So that is one of the characteristics of a complex system. They are embedded in a multiplicity of parts. They are under nonlinear interactions. So this idea of cause and effect, cause and consequence, it's not as simple as we have in more simple systems. So we don't have A plus B equals something, right? Because sometimes B feedbacks their behavior into A, and then that creates another part of behavior that that is not sometimes predictable, and then that creates another part of organization, and things scale in exponential ways, in different ways that linear interactions do. So that makes it a bit more difficult and brings more unknown to the situation. Sensitivity to initial conditions. I really like this one because if we think about the butterfly effect, have you heard of the butterfly effect before? Can you maybe just share with me what that is? Just very quickly, or in the chat, or unmute yourself.
You
Yes.
mean like there's the common saying that like the butterfly flapping its wings could ultimately create a hurricane on the other side of the world. Like that's the saying behind it, but it's more so about like the fact that you where that like everything about that butterfly like causes is in that moment is what causes the effect to be produced, and it can be drastically different depending on where it originates and what the conditions are in which it exists.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. So as you're saying, the initial conditions that that butterfly was created and so on are going to affect like a chain of reactions and behaviors up to, years ahead. So, and in completely different locations. So it's not just a very local type of behaviors that is going to be dealt with and so on. These are going to spread over time and space in a way that is going to amplify the initial conditions that were created. So yes, thank you, Braden. That's another aspect of complex systems that makes it more difficult for us to really get our hands around. Hierarchical organization. So this is a interesting one because in general, I would say nowadays, more hierarchical perspectives to, let's say, organizations and companies and so on are being very, let's say, criticized in a lot of ways because it's very top down. People don't have spaces to discuss and to talk. They don't have a say on the organization. And this is not exactly what we're talking about here, right? So when we talk about hierarchical organizations, it's more that there are systems, big systems, and then you have subsystems, and then you have systems below that. And all that is important to actually create the overall structure that we see. So it's not here, is not that top-down approach, it's more of the for a whole to exist, it needs to have subsystems and sub aspects to it that are going to create the different levels of organization within a complex systems. And that is very important to consider as well. So yes, you had your hand up, Brayden.
Oh, it was yeah, you addressed the language in it, like quite, yeah, I just meant I was thinking that the word hierarchical, like in the way that the diagram is displayed, like maybe like embedded like structure or something where it's like systems within systems, like makes a little more sense. But just like the term hierarchical organization like invokes, yeah, like you said, a corporate CEO structure.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that you have this one agent on top that is going to say what the other agents are actually going to do, right? It's the exact opposite, because in complex systems you have this idea of self-organization that is exactly as you're saying, right? There's no top-down command, someone saying to others what to do. Self-organization is really about each part of each system, each subsystem is actually going to work individually, but interdependent to the other agents to create this emergent property of the system. So if we've seen like a flock of birds as we have here, each bird is doing their own thing, right? Each bird is actually flying and following very simple rules around that specific system. But when you actually look up, there's no center of command. There's no one bird telling others what to do. They are working synergistically together and influencing the overall pattern of organization. So this is another important feature of complex systems. Arsene, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thanks, Yasmin. This is super brilliant. I just wanted to comment on the self-organization part, linking it to the whole concept of emergence. That is also in the systems theory, especially when we think of systems awareness, how things self-organized themselves in a particular system, and how they can create or allow a new system or new power dynamics or relationships or whatever you want to call it to emerge as a result of how things are self-organizing themselves. So going back to what you said when you were talking about simple and complicated or complex system, you will see that, as you said, cause and effect in simple system is completely different when you deal with complex systems, in the sense that with complex systems, you don't know when A influences B and C, you don't know the connection that C has with another element in the system that can all change the whole behavior of that system and how those elements are reacting among them. So yeah, that's a comment I wanted to make on the self-organization that also comes from how patterns emerge in a particular system. Yeah, unpredictable, as you were saying. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's a good bridge to this other topic of emergence here, which is very key to complex systems. And yes, as Arsene was saying, this is a very, let's say, somewhat difficult topic to discuss, because in our everyday life, we're dealing with a lot of linear cause and effect problem perspectives, right, to our lives. And sometimes understanding these ideas in practice can be quite tricky. But emergence essentially comes from bringing to life, or bringing to the surface, and being created in a way. So when we see let's say a challenge, of poverty, right? It's not that you can break down all the elements in that system and trying to find what poverty is in each one of these elements. So you can't really find poverty as a concept in, for example, the housing or in the financial system or in the individuals themselves, or you can't do that. The emergence actually comes from a pattern that is created based on the relationship of these elements. So there needs to be a relationship there to actually create something new. So this is the, let's say, the fundamentals to why we say that, well, 1 + 1 is more than 2, right? Because it's not just summing the parts together and then having the results of it. Is essentially the relationship, the connections amongst these elements. They are going to bring something new to the surface. And this is very, very key to complex systems. And lastly, and I'll let you speak because I've spoken a lot right so far. And lastly, robustness, that it's quite interesting because, as going back to the flock of birds, for example, if you take one bird out of the flock, it's going to continue being that marvelous shape that we see in the sky. If you take two birds, it's still going to be that marvelous shape, self-organizing and in a way dancing amongst the elements, right? So robustness really talks about the resistance of the system to deal with change and deal with, let's say, things that happen to the system itself and to the elements of the system. So complex systems, because they are dealing with change all the time, because they are dealing with unexpectedness and unknowns all the time, they sometimes continue being what they are. So, and sometimes they even increase. So they persist over change and difficulty. And that makes these systems very robust and very resilient to the changes that we encounter and the changes that these systems go through. And this is quite an important characteristic to take into consideration as well. I had more things to comment here, but I would like to hear from you before we continue, because I would have a lot of questions to ask, and I would like to hear from you what you think about complex systems now. But I would let Linda speak first.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, for the very simple and easy to digest presentation. I just wanted to comment, when you spoke about robustness, something came to my mind related to climate change. So, and I wanted to ask this as a question: would that be the reason why we feel like we don't see the change, even though there are lots of actions taking place within the system? I think there are a lot of actors, private sector, governments. I mean, everyone is trying to do something, and people are coming up with policies, different kind of actions. But we're not seeing the real change in the climate. Like, we're actually seeing things getting worse. If we talk about temperatures right now, temperatures are going up, like extreme ends, you know, in different places. So would that be an example of the robustness of climate change?
Yeah, that's a very good example, Linda. Because one thing that is quite good to think about is that none of these concepts or characteristics are good or bad, right? They are not something that we can consider, you know, good or yeah, we can't judge it like that. So when we talk about robustness, for example, it can seem to be something that it's very good because it's resilient, it's resisting change and so on. But as Linda was saying, climate change is still there and it's amplifying, going back to this idea of the sensitivity to the initial conditions. It's amplifying. There's a lot of different parts actually being involved, and it's just increasing its importance in being talked about because it's not going away anytime soon if we continue doing the same things as we're actually doing. So that shows a very good example of robustness to the system, that yeah, it continues being there. And if we don't change the ways that we approach our everyday life and policy and environmental understanding and so on, it's going to continue being there and getting worse. So that's a very good point, Linda. Thank you. And yes, I will stop right now because I've spoken quite a lot. And I'll stop sharing my screen to see you and ask, are you dealing with any challenges right now that you can say it's a complex challenge? And how can you see some of these characteristics actually embedded in the challenges that you're facing, or a challenge that you heard and that you think it's important to consider? So open the floor for you to share with me challenges and if they're complex or not, and why is that, for us to have a discussion.
I mean, I don't want to take up like all the space.
You can go.
No, I was just so the way that our organization is approaching these complex challenges is trying to figure out, it's essentially tackling it from more of a like a raised level above any individual challenge. It's like, how do we restructure the system that we exist in general, like the societal structures, political and economic structures, so that we're better positioned to solve those types of challenges, where the way that we organize ourselves so far, it doesn't lend ourselves well to doing that. And so this is more of a exercise in studying the system structures that we're in, figuring out what doesn't work, and then learning to be creative and re-envisioning new ways to organize. So it's the way that I see complex systems. It's more about like you can like learning. You'll never know everything about a complex system, and it's a constant learning exercise. And so the more that we learn about the existing system, the more we'll be able to change how we act within the system to then promote something that can be more effective for our own well-being.
Yes, I really, really like that. And you said something very key. It's constant learning. You don't have right answers, and you will never have, because all these agents in the systems are changing over time and adapting and recreating themselves. So we can't really go and say we have the answers whilst all these things are in a dynamic motion and changing over time. So constant learning and constant adaptation to the challenges, as you're saying, is very, very important approach to dealing with these complex systems. And another very important part is the structure, as you're saying, understanding the structure and paying attention to how it behaves and how it's organized, instead of just assessing the consequences and that's it, that's how we're going to deal with it. So that's very good, Braden. Thank you. Linda?
Okay, thanks, Yasmin. And thanks so much, Braden. I also wanted to pick on exactly what Yasmin was talking about when you spoke about learning. I think from my experience, I realized that navigating complexity is basically about being open to learning on, like you switch on the learning that it never goes off, because lots of changes come and then you need to kind of work out how to manage those particular changes. And an interesting example for me is this community and how it started. So Riasa started off as a consulting firm back in 2020. And the idea was like, oh, we feel like we can support nonprofit organizations, social enterprises, government departments, and all to design impact projects. But as we entered into that phase of trying to identify those people and selling what we had, we actually realized that nobody is applying systems thinking at all. Very people who are doing that in the academic space, and there's not much of a practice of systems change, and most people didn't even know about even the term. So then it looked like the idea of being a consulting firm and covering that gap wasn't going to work. So we had to restructure, and we said, okay, we want to be a social impact network company, but we're also going to be sharing more knowledge on systems thinking and make it practical and bring more people to it. And then the idea now of the community as the network came into place. So if I have to think about it, it's something that actually emerged because and it's something that completely new, completely different from what was there in the beginning. But it's a process that came through emergence and learning, adjusting and adapting. Yeah, that's the example that I wanted to give from my experience. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. And yeah, constant learning, constant paying attention to what's happening and understanding what's going on and trying to come up with ideas instead of fixed solutions to what's going on and bringing more people in and sharing. And yes, that's amazing, Linda. Thank you. Fru.
Hi, Jasmine. Sorry I stepped in 30 minutes late, so I missed out what was discussed initially. But just picking up from what Linda just said now, I just wanted to ask her this question, like when you are bringing in people, are you bringing people from the same system, or you're bringing, because remember the systems are interlinked, right? So if, let's say for example, if we want to solve the issue of climate change, obviously climate change is being caused by different systems. So in the course of your learning, are you bringing all the systems together, or you're only bringing one stakeholders from the same system? Like for instance, maybe you're bringing people from, let's say for example, you identify that the climate change is being caused by health problem, and meanwhile there are other systems that are affecting the health that leads to the climate problem. Are you bringing the other people that are, because there are some issues that are not visible, and most of the times these invisible problems are what actually cause the main thing that we don't see. So it's always advisable that if we are bringing people, we are bringing people from the same, from different systems that all interlink to lead to the climate change. By so doing, we can have a proper conversation, and also we can leverage solutions from the different systems to also have an impact on the problem that we are facing. So that's just what I wanted to add, and add also on that.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow, this is a big question. But going back to some of the characteristics of the complex system, for example, that we were sharing, and going back to the hierarchical organization, let's say, there's no one system without all the other systems actually being in place, because as we were saying, and climate change is a very good example of it, this is an emergent property of all the other systems actually working together. And in this case, in not very healthy ways, but they are embedded in the same, let's say, overall organization, and they are working together right now to let's say the emergence of climate change is because there are all these other systems in place. So for us to have a better understanding of the development of this change, of this of the climate change, and to have to be better equipped on how to tackle, it's important to bring as many people from all these other systems involved, because we can only see in a very, very tiny fraction of what's going on, right, ourselves. But if we bring all these other people together, seeing tiny fractions together, we can see a lot more than what we can see alone. So yes, as many people together as possible. Not an easy thing to do. It's better, easier said than done. But yeah, ideally, as many areas of research, as many fields of knowledge, as many practitioners and academics, and yeah, as many people and interests as possible, for sure. Yes, thank you
So,
for your question.
to say that, well, for this community, it's open to everyone from all backgrounds, and people coming from different cultures, because perspective is very, very important when you're looking at trying to understand the complex system. So it's also important to bring as many people from as many different fields as possible to get those different perspectives. So the idea of a network is also to bring those different people through. So to understand that if you're talking about health, you're not going to be able to talk about it in isolation. You can't miss talking about unemployment, just something that can sound so random, but there's so many interconnections with different issues. That's just an example that I'm giving. So yeah, as we developing the community, we are quite intentional and quite aware of the fact that we need to bring in as many people from as many places, different knowledge, perspective, experiences, qualifications, name it. Yeah.
That's very, very true, Linda. Thank you. Yes, Braden, you have your hand up.
I was gonna build on what Linda was just saying, and then also what Jessica put in the chat, because she was talking about, building ways to build those new systems. And I think that point that Linda just made really is the concept of the collective intelligence, that we have more knowledge altogether than we do apart. And I think one of the ways that the current system we're in disincentivizes that is by the way that there's a sense of more of like an ownership, like you're incentivized to keep things to yourself so that you can profit from it in like the capitalist sense. Whereas like when you're solving, like even when we're talking about solving, global problems that affect everyone, people will still use this language of, you will need to start a company, kind of thing, instead of thinking, well, why not bring everyone who it affects into the same room and use everyone's knowledge and their insight to, inform something more effective. So I think that's what I'm doing in my work and you guys are doing in yours. And I think we have the right mindset.
Awesome, Braden. Yes, Arsene, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I like what Braden say about collective intelligence, because we are based here in Somerset West. We're working with various actors to try and tackle the issue of unemployment in our communities here. So we've already done a project in the township that is dealing with unemployment, which I'm not going to talk about now. But the most what made me comment is on what Braden say about collective intelligence, because here at the Heidelberg region, there is a movement initiated by an old woman who's been here, for many years. She's known as the guru of the community. She's done a lot, especially in Black communities. She's a hero. So she started this movement where she's bringing actors that are working in this space to try and discuss and understand this issue of unemployment and how to address it. Obviously, it's a complex topic. It's contextual, as you said, Yasmin, the issue of unemployment in our community. But as we were having our very first meeting, what I felt like what can be the starting point toward this issue, and I'd also mentioned, is the collective intelligence, in the sense that I feel like we are all far as actors, we are all far from seeing that, from understanding that it's not about competing interests, it's not about positioning your own organization or whatever it is. It's really about being able to see things in the same direction and understanding what each actors or organization can bring. In fact, that's the work of systems change. The work of systems change is really about that, applying these all beautiful concept of systems thinking and putting our effort together based on our expertise, our experience, our power also in the society, power to influence, be it at the community level. That's putting that together to drive, and that's where I'm feeling like we have to be putting more effort is in that, the reflexive thinking, looking at you as individual, as an actor or a stakeholder in the society, and getting to understand your own world, your own view, perception about the world. How is that creating the world around you, and how is that influencing whatever we see around? Those perceptions that we often have, be it at the individual level, at the organizational level. I think if we start talking about it, raising awareness and getting people to shift their thinking, and that's where that's where we'll get to the point of putting our effort together and understanding the vision and being able to push this agenda. So to me, I think the mental model is key, and this reminds me of the whole metaphor of the iceberg. So understanding the mental models, dealing with all the issues all the things that exist when you're thinking of mental models, culture, behavior, all that, putting that together. I think if we start shifting those, we can be able to even define or shift the structure that we want to create for the society that we want to build. Even some of the challenge or the problems that we want to address, like climate change, as Jessica was saying. The work of systems change is really about that. It's not about wiping out the old system completely, but it's really about understanding the failure or the strength of the old system, thinking of how to work with it, and looking at other innovation that exists there to facilitate that change. And obviously, this is not something that can happen in one day. It requires our commitment, it requires our collective intelligence, it requires all that together. Yeah, thanks.
Beautiful, Arsene. Very good. Linda, sorry, I think we can't hear you right now. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, okay, great. Can hear you now.
Okay, I just wanted to add on to what Arsene was talking about, collective intelligence, coming from what Braden said, and reflexive thinking. So basically, that understanding of how we understand the problem, I think is also key. So we can come together collectively to say this is what we want to do, but of course we need to have that understanding that we are understanding the problem to get the same way. I don't know if that's possible, but basically bringing those different perspectives and understanding how every actor sees the problem and how does it appear to them and what do they think could be an action to intervene. So yeah, it's all really complex. Even when you start thinking about what actions to take, it becomes really complex. We need to dig deeper before we even start doing any actions to understand how are we understanding the problem. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, Linda. Very important
Jamal
comments there.
has his hand up.
Yeah. Jamal, if you're talking, you're on mute. We can't hear you right now.
Hello guys.
Like,
So matters concerning collective intelligence. So to what Linda have just said, I will say just having a group of experts, putting them together, being that they're a group of experts, they can rely on such sources like the hardware or the software. Am I right? Am I on the right track?
sorry, do you mind maybe just repeating your question? You're saying that
Yeah.
yes, sorry.
Actually, I'm just adding on what Linda has just said. So I'm saying that under collective intelligence, I would say that maybe if, let's say you have a group, you have a group of experts, being that they are experts, they can rely on sources of having an hardware or a software so that they can have more skills. Under that they can have some data information or knowledge concerning on what they want to do. Let's say, for example, back here in Kibra, if you're not sure on what you want to do or if you're not sure on what you're going to start, you can rely on softwares, maybe let's say Google, and maybe you can start and think of how you can start a certain project or something. So under collective intelligence, I would say that being that you can rely on expert, but you can also rely on softwares and everything. Maybe if I'm on the right track.
Well, Braden would like to comment on that.
Also, Linda, when you try to speak, we can't hear it's not loud enough. So maybe there's an audio issue. But I was going to say about what Jamal was talking about. Software is different types of softwares and technologies can be useful to help to gather collective intelligence. You can use, for example, AI to synthesize large amounts of data from many different people. You can use democratic technologies like Polis, which is used in Taiwan, which gathers helps to enable more participation in, for example, citizens' assemblies and things like that. But I think that ultimately the technology should be used to aid the people-centered process, where a lot of times people have technologies that need applications, whereas we should be developing the technologies that aid us gathering the intelligence and focusing on more the people who need to be accessed. Many times there are places that they wouldn't be able to input information into the software because they don't have internet connection or they don't have access to these technologies, and the intelligence from those people as well, their knowledge and their experience should still be incorporated. So it's software and technology is a very useful tool, but I think we have to like incorporate it in the right way, like so that it's as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, I think Braden did a way better job than I would. So yes, I think just to put in, I think in different words, softwares are another part of the system, as humans are, as natural resources are, and so on. So of course they are extremely important, and we should definitely, as Braden said, use them carefully as we go along. But yeah, the collective intelligence is the emergent feature of technologies putting together, of human beings thinking together and acting together and all that. So yeah, the very, very important point, talking about the technologies that can help bridge the collective intelligence of human beings and other beings as well. Great, everyone. We are 1 minute to the finishing part of our session. So I would like to thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you coming for the first community gathering event. And yeah, I learned a lot from your insights. And thank you very much for being very present and for, yeah, sharing your ideas and thoughts with us. I would just like to share here on the chat our next event that is happening on April, and it's going to be on community gathering and so on. So how can we bring people together to actually talk about these ideas? A topic that I would like to explore as well, and I would love if you could come to our next event. The link is here. You can RSVP and share with everyone. It would be great to have you here again. So thank you very much for coming to our first community gathering, and wait for you next month. Take care.
Thank you for inviting me.
No worries.
I was just wondering if because Linda, we were talking earlier about, because we had this discussion before. Do you still have the same email that you used before, or do you have a new email?
Linda, can you hear?